Hey, this is Chris Pratt with the Teach Bigger podcast, and I want to welcome you to our second part of the episode called The Calling of the Teacher. It's an interview with Billie Parker, and if you didn't tune in last time, I want to encourage you to listen to the first part of this interview first because it really gives a lot of perspective of where we're headed today. But in today's episode, we want to take some time to take a deeper look into how Billie Parker was able to build culture in the school that she's been in and how that culture was so successful. I know that today's episode is going to change you as a teacher because it certainly changed me. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoyed the second part of our interview with Billie Parker, The Calling of the Teacher.
This kind of goes against what I was originally thinking probably the last year or two, where I would always say, like, you have to be passionate about your content. If you're not passionate about your content, then, like, what are you doing? Then you're probably not going to be enjoying it. But I totally overlooked the fact that if you're just passionate about teaching, then that can make up for a lot of you not being passionate about your content.
Yeah. And that speaks a lot because, there are a lot of teachers who are in a situation where maybe they like this content, but their principal says this year you will be teaching this other content. Mm-hmm. But you know what?
That's a lot.
Those teachers often end up still successful because of this very fact. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to really kind of sit and kind of meditate and think about this because I do think that it can weigh on you teaching something that you don't care about. Mm-hmm. But I also think that if you're just passionate about helping people, that could probably carry you through because you know what these kids need. And it reminds me a lot of when I was in college. I was part of this percussion club thing, and they didn't do anything. And I remember being very upset that it didn't do anything. And when it came time for like the president and the whatever to come about to be reelected, I ran for it. And I remember them asking me, like, how bad do you want this? I was like, I don't want this. I don't want to do this, but nobody's doing it. So I feel like I have to. And like that, just doing that was enough to stir enough people up. So that way we all got serious about it, and it became something. And I think teachers do the same thing. It's like, I don't care about science or I don't care about English, but these kids need this. And I know that I'm good enough at breaking things down, building culture, and I'm passionate about education that I can step into this role and I can give them what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
last year at spring break, I got math class. I became a math teacher after spring break last year, or the week before spring break. Our math teacher quit. They said, you are now the math teacher. So even that happened, I've never taught math before, don't know anything about math, but I know I can break things down and I know I can get them excited about it. And that's really what, like you were saying, that was really what it's about. I never thought I'd be a math teacher, but I took it, and because I was excited about the kids, we learned some things, even through online learning. And
you know what? I mean, I know we've said on here before that, test scores don't matter, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, they do show some type of data, even though it's not enough to hold a lot of weight, maybe for what we're trying to do. But just saying that your STAR test when you're at that school, it went from 34% passing to 90.
94, you said? Wow.
Yeah, 94.
Like, no one can argue with that data. I mean, you can say that test, like, whatever, like, but that is clear growth that happened. And that is just absolutely, like, jaw-dropping, astonishing. And the fact that you didn't have your traditional teacher school upbringing. Do you think that the way you did your alternative certification, do you think that affected your teaching career or your teaching ability or anything like that?
So when we did the alternative certification, we did attend some of those teacher classes, and they're like, well, if you teach reading, you should maybe think about these things. If you teach science, you should do these things. But frankly, I was teaching all day and going to those classes from 8 to 10. So I wasn't even really paying that much attention. And I had already passed my PPR and my content before I even started the program. So I don't think that helped me much other than for them to sign off on the paperwork.
Yeah.
Wow. So if there was
I don't think
ever,
I learned.
if there was
them
ever a,
$5,000 for nothing.
Well, isn't that the story of higher education?
right?
Yes.
So if there was ever like a talent for teaching, or like, when you see like that one, like that musician or that ball player, and like they could probably drop out of college right now and they'd go directly into it, they'd probably be totally fine. I think that you would be the equivalent of that, because you passed these tests and you did these things before, you know what I mean? Like you did it all kind of like topsy-turvy, and it just goes to show that like it is the passion that comes from within you that drives you. And I mean, you stayed late, not because you got paid extra, not because your principal, you even said that your principal forgot about you until they looked at their test scores.
That's crazy.
Yes. Well, because we didn't even have a school. So they were trying to find a place for us to have a school. We didn't have a copier for 6 weeks. I mean, like they were worried about bigger problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how do we even keep our school open? So they were like, teachers, as long as nobody's complaining,
Look, and I think this is also a huge testament to the cons of online learning. Yeah, you can learn things online. You can do like YouTube University. You can do all those things. But like in your situation, your school basically got destroyed by Ike, and you were, I don't even know where you were having school. You didn't have a copier. I can only imagine that like the biggest technology you had was probably your phone or your watch. You know what I mean?
Well, this was 10 years ago. So no, not even my phone or my watch.
But I mean, and like, look at that. Like you still found a way to not just teach, not just deliver the content, but you found a way to do it at a high successful rate, at a very high quality. And I think that's a huge testimony that you don't always need technology. You don't always need all these bells and whistles. Yes, it's nice and it makes things way easier. But if you don't have that base knowledge of how to just be a teacher, how to break things down, then you're never fully going to understand how to use that technology to its fullest extent. I don't know.
And I'd even add being flexible to your list. That's a big thing, because even with the technology, is technology going to work today? Or you get dropped on that you're having a pep rally at 2:00, so being flexible with your lessons, and, or fire drill in the middle of the day, so how can I still get them what they need to know? So that's our keyword this year in my classroom, is just being flexible.
Yeah.
If we have to go and do something else, just, can you change on the fly? Are you very rigid? And you're like, no, I don't like when my plans get changed. I need them to, I have this planned. We have to do this. So flexibility, I think, is a big one to add to. And I think that was my biggest thing. Some days the kids, their behavior was so bad, we didn't learn anything, but we learned how to sit down and be quiet. Yeah. We learned how to be nice to somebody. We learned how to build those relationships. So sometimes lessons didn't even get covered. Sometimes there was a bigger lesson to be, but I was flexible enough to go, okay, today we're not even going to learn if we can't get past this other point.
Yeah.
That is so huge. Well, one thing, I'm glad that we added flexibility to it, because I like the number 6 way more than number 5.
Oh my gosh. That's I'm glad that you said that, because I worked with a first year teacher last year, and he was like that. If things were not, a certain way, he would just get frazzled. And I said, hey, listen, I'm so like go with the flow. I'm orange personality. I'm like, oh, it'll be fine, whatever. Yeah, that's burning over there, but we'll just go around and go to, so he thanked me. He said, I'm so happy that I work with you, because you help put things in perspective, and I can go with the flow and adapt now. Before, I would just be if something small would change. I said, dude, in education, we have to roll with the punches, and you just have to be able to, change on the flip of a dime and not be frazzled by it, because then your kids get the, the worst side of you if you're frazzled, And so I said, you always want to come at them with a cool, calm, collected, because you're like the stability in their life. So you can't be up and down, and they respect that. So anyway, I'm glad you put that. That's on our list. Forever flexible.
Yeah. And it's so crazy, because Pratt, this makes me think about our camping trip because Billy, I don't know if I've ever talked about it, but me and Pratt, when we were with the band, we saw that the kids were treating each other really terribly, and they couldn't sit still, they couldn't focus, they couldn't do these things, and we couldn't teach them. So we decided to do this like big camping retreat thing. And the whole point of it was to teach humility, to teach these just basically like how to be a person. And we had all these things, whatever, and they came back, and then we were able to teach them the content way easier. And of course we still, I mean, they're kids. We still had days where we had to be like, stand up, remember what we're doing, like, type of deal. So if you're a teacher out there and you're sitting there and you're listening, because I know this happens all the time, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to get them to sit down and be quiet. I don't have time to teach them how to be a person. I have to do my test. Well, look, Miss Parker did it. Miss Parker got them to sit down, be quiet, be a good person, and be nice and kind to each other. And she
got 94%.
And she got 94%. She went from 30 to 94%. So maybe you're doing it wrong.
Well, it's the whole thing. It's the thing we've always said is that if they can't pay attention, it doesn't matter how great your content is. They're not listening to it anyways. So you're not getting anywhere.
I'm teaching. They're just not learning.
Right. Right. So yeah, I mean,
I made a PowerPoint.
We have to base our success, right? We have to base our success not on what we're teaching, but what they're learning. So yeah.
Amen.
All right. Well, so kind of take us now. I mean, we've kind of got a good idea of how you got started, which is completely amazing and impressive and exciting. So where are you now? How many years in are you? And just give us a thought of like, have you held to the same system, if you will, like the same philosophy throughout all these years, or are there some definite things that have changed in the way you approach what you do?
Sure. So after a couple of years I was there, I had my boys and I decided to stay home with them, but I was driving my mom nuts being at home. So I went back to being a substitute teacher. So I did that for, about 9 years, and I did it pretty regularly, 2 or 3 days a week. And then I ended up with a long-term position for the whole year as a behaviorist for the class. So I did the kids that like went to jail and went to the mental hospitals, and then they came back to my class to be reintroduced into the school.
Wow.
So that was a tough shebang in there too, that behavior. But the same thing, they just wanted to know that they were loved, they were supported, and that they had somebody that had their back. So I did that. And then the next year I was a special ed teacher, did a resource classroom. So that's kind of a little bit of a back and forth. Because I am an EC38 generalist, ESL, and a SPED certified. So I can do a little bit of everything in there. And I did the GT certification. So I've got a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And then I decided I was ready to go back to a full-time school. And I put in a bunch of applications and nothing came back. And my kids had gone to this private school for a pre-K. And my husband was like, hey, why don't you check there? With all the things that are going on in the world, it probably wouldn't hurt our kids to be able to go to a Christian school. And I was like, I don't have a deep Christian background. I didn't go to a Christian school. And I was like, I'll try. So I applied, and the lady remembered me, and she was like, well, we only make this amount of money. Are you still interested before we even do anything? And I was like, yeah, I'm more interested in my boys, and I miss being kids and having my own classroom. And so she, within the week got the job and started there, and they were a little worried of me being with a behavior background. But these kids here have the same thing. They just want to be loved. They want to be respected. And they learn the same way. You still have to break it down into small pieces for them. You have to learn to multiply before you can divide, that kind of thing. And still being flexible, because we still have, things going on. And we have very little technology in our school. So the being entertainment is all on me.
Yeah.
I am the entertainment. Because we don't have hardly any at all. We share our classrooms with the church. I have to close my room up so they can have service in there on the weekends. But I love it. And the kids, they still all have the same needs. There's nothing that changes. They want to be loved and respected, and they need that flexibility and knowing that it's going to be the same every day. Every day you're going to come in and sit down, and this is what's going to happen. And I'm going to love you, and we're going to learn something. So that really hasn't changed any, even in a Christian environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is one of your favorite lessons, or one lesson maybe that you're really, really proud of that you've done this year that you think was like really cool and you felt like the kids like really learned?
Oh, there's so many. The one that I'm really proud of more than was fun. I started teaching math this year, and our class last year in 4th grade, they never learned division. We went through 3 math teachers last year, me being the last one, and then 6 months of COVID and whatever else was going on at home with them. So we started from basics with division. Like, these are the steps of how we divide, and it's the opposite of multiplication. And we even cut out and colored these cheeseburgers for the steps that you divide, multiply. So we did all those things. And then the kids are like, oh, I get it. I understand it now, and they're all like, division's not so hard, And so I'm really proud that they were able to overcome. And that's what I tell them every day. You've got to have an open math mind. I can't teach you anything unless you're ready to learn. And that's their homework every day, is to come to school with their open math mind.
Wow.
So I was really proud that they all got the division. And then I gave one kid a high five, and then another kid gave somebody else a high five. And we had like high fives going all across the classroom. And I was just like, oh, like it was just amazing.
That's it right there. That's turning your lesson into an experience.
Yeah.
And that's something we've kind of talked a little bit about on this show, is like we've talked about the difference between having a lesson design, a lesson plan, then a lesson agenda. But the lesson design and lesson plan, it needs to be an experience. It can't just have a PowerPoint or anything up there. And that's how, if you're looking for that teacher moment high, that's how you're going to get it.
Yeah.
Yes.
that's it. Okay. This is one of my last questions, and I'll turn it over to somebody else, but do you have any plans or any desire to be in administration, or do you think that maybe you could teach teachers to be good, or do you think that you'd miss the classroom too much?
I've kind of gone back and forth on that. I really would like to teach teachers. That's because so many teachers that I talk to, and I always, like my first year teaching, I ended up being the science teacher lead for everybody. And they would come to me for their lessons. Like, how do I incorporate them and make them more exciting? And I love teaching that about teachers, how to use simple things in the classroom, not necessarily technology. So I'm the mentor at our school. So when we have new teachers, I can come in and I can help them. But I think I would miss the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I would miss the kiddos. They're my energy, my fuel. And the reason why I think that is because during COVID, I was so drained. I didn't have a lot of want to. I feel like I missed out on that energy that kids just exude.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, I can see you on the screen, but, I can't touch you, and I can't give you a high five, and I can't look at your paper and put a happy face on there or something like that. So I miss those little times.
So let me ask this then. There's a lot of teachers around the nation and even the world that listen that are still dealing with shutdown, and they're still doing remote learning. So what kind of suggestion or advice might you give them? Maybe there's a teacher who is a lot like you, and they're saying, I totally missed this and it's not working for me. What did you find anything that was a remedy for that? Or maybe do you have any thoughts for that situation?
Yeah, so I try to make it personal. So like once a week, especially, I would find a way to incorporate something that normally I would incorporate to my class. My kids love hearing about my goats and my chickens. So I would go outside and I would show them a picture of my goats, or we'd go out and check eggs in the barn, through the Zoom, and or I'd ask them, we're talking about habitats. We went out and looked at the goats' habitat. We'd go out and we're doing life sciences. So we had found butterflies, and kids would sit, I would post pictures of butterflies or caterpillars, and then they would start posting back to me. So I knew that they were interacting and they were out looking for those same things. So I still was able to put myself into the classroom. I would ask them what they're planting outside so we could have those conversations. And they really like doing like the Kahoot, where I could be on there with them and see them learn. And they get so excited and to hear their voices. I think that was the big key, was just getting to hear them and their laughter, is like little bells, to hear them get excited. And that, there was some that I knew I wasn't reaching, but the ones that were there needed it at that time. Yeah. And that's the teacher that you got to be, is you're helping the kids that need it at that time. If somebody's not ready to take you in, then they're not going to, but somebody needs you. And so I was able to reach those that, needed me at the time. And that's what kept me going.
Y'all, so just quick little thing. Y'all know this about her goats, but one day she came home and there was an extra goat. Like a goat just showed up out of nowhere, and what's the goat's name?
I was telling my husband, I was like, we need to keep her. She's so beautiful. He's like, yeah, we'll name her Nacho because she's Nacho Goat. But she's still here, and she's still my goat.
So you've had experience going into classrooms that were less than accepting, I guess, since the teachers before you quit. And then you had experience working with the behavioral transition, those students. I know those situations can be very hard. So what advice do you have to teachers who are in similar situations, how to stay positive? Because I know in those situations, you have a lot of behavior things and you can take things personal, but what did you do to stay positive and or to recharge yourself until there was some light to be seen at the end of the tunnel?
Sure. So when the kid wrote you a note on the desk or gave you a flower outside, I really had to hold on to those good moments, and I put those notes up. They're still up on my wall at school. That way, when I'm having a bad day, I'm like, okay, at some point in time, I'm doing something right. I already won the Teacher of the Year award like 3 weeks into the school. That's up on my board from, my students, but that's okay. But it's up on my board, so if I come in and I'm having a bad day and I'm like, oh, I'm tired today, I walk in and that's the first thing I see. I see that all those notes and things that the kids have given me, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right. And the same thing when I was doing online learning, those comments that I would get, Miss Parker, I miss you. Miss Parker, I love you. Miss Parker, I saw a caterpillar today. And I'm like, you know what? But you saw a caterpillar and you thought enough of me to tell me about it. Not anybody else, but you wanted to tell me about that caterpillar. And that just, I was like, okay, I'm making a difference. It's
celebrating the small successes.
Sure. Yeah. And as a science teacher, you get a lot of rocks and bugs and flowers. The teachers down the hall, the English teacher gets Starbucks cards. No, I get rocks and flowers and, bugs. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to point out like your advice that you gave for like the person who's still on remote teaching and stuff, about how you would I'm assuming you would do like a Google Meet or something on your phone and you would just go out to the chickens and check them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like that's like that right there, and how you captured those kids. That's the number one reason why kids watch streamers and watch YouTubers, because they do the same exact thing.
Yep.
And you have cracked the code. You have found the balance between going out there and doing that stuff and making it educational, where I think that is still something that I'm still struggling with. And I think a lot of teachers are still in denial with, because I straight up watched a 4-hour stream today about, it was just this person and their boyfriend, and they just cooked. And they walked around and and I'm telling you, like, they woke up, they brushed their teeth, they went to the supermarket, the whole time streaming everything, trying to debate what apple they're going to get, what food, whatever. And they came back home and they cooked it. And I watched all of it and I was captivated the entire time. So that's
Tyler, that just means you need to get a life.
4 hours. I was thinking 4 hours. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, okay, well, think about this. 4 hours, that's literally 8 episodes. That's a whole season of like a 30-minute show on Netflix.
Yeah, that's
true.
So,
when your district is listening.
Well,
unless you have any more days off.
I don't know. But so you basically did that. It was like Adventures with Miss Parker out with her eggs. And you know what I mean?
It's edutainment. Yeah. It's edutainment. So
edutainment. Just got to do it.
Well, listen, Miss Parker, I think that in this 40 minutes that we've had you on today, we probably have said more. Well, you have said more, and we have learned more than we could have in months or maybe a lifetime. And I just can't thank you enough for joining us today. I think that the insight that you've given, it has totally refreshed me, and I'm going to go back.
It is
right.
refreshing.
And I'm going to go love my children tomorrow.
Yes.
So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being a part of our podcast. And, we want this message to get out. And really, when I look at it, Miss Parker is a perfect example of teaching bigger, right? Mm-hmm. She's not, just responding to situations, but she's doing what's best for kids, and she's making it happen in the relationship she's building, and then in the content that she does. So just thank you so much for what you're doing for kids, and thank you for what you've given us today. It's really, really powerful. We really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share how I teach bigger and how I help these kiddos and help love them through, the things that you guys say on your podcast, and teaching bigger from you guys, and taking those tools that I can take back as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So maybe just as we kind of close out, what would you say right now to the teacher who, we're in November and maybe they've heard this podcast and they're like, okay, I want to keep trying. What advice would you say for the teacher who is, maybe struggling, but you've been there, how it feels. So what kind of encouragement might you give them?
That God put you there for a reason, and that there is a kid there that needs you, and that don't give up on them. Yeah. They're not going to give up on you, because they're definitely going to miss you when you're gone. So you're making a difference, and you're doing what's right, and you're helping them. You don't always see it, but it's there. You are their teacher, and you're what's important to them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
That's it.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Teach like Billy.
Yes, #teach like Billy.
Teach like Billy.
Right? I love it.
Teach bigger.
So, well, thank you guys for listening today. Hopefully that you enjoyed the podcast, and we'd love to hear back from
Absolutely.
you. If you have any ideas for a show, if you want to get in touch with Miss Parker, maybe you need to reach out to her and say, you're the best thing I've ever heard in my life. Please tell me. So I'm sure she'd be willing to correspond with you.
I'd love to hear it. Love to hear it.
So you can email us at info@teachbigger. That's info@teachbigger. That's our email address. Also, you can engage with us on different social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter, Teach Bigger. You can also find us on Instagram as well. So we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to get some feedback from you. What am I forgetting, Tyler? YouTube channel. Check out the YouTube channel.
Yeah, YouTube channel. And if you have any pictures of, maybe you have a lesson that you've done really well, and you have the product, maybe y'all did a project or something, take a picture of it, put it on Instagram, #ITeachBigger. Or if you feel like you're doing something really cool with your kids or whatever that you think is like what Miss Parker here is doing, then you put #TeachLikeParker, #TeachLikeBilly. And then we can kind of collect those things up, and we can share that. We're building a community of teachers. We're trying to turn what it means to be a teacher to really, and I hate this term, you guys know it, we're trying to turn the teacher into a rock star.
Yes,
there it was.
Let's do it. So, well, thanks for listening today. And also, I just want to challenge you, share this episode with somebody that you know, and give us a rating on your podcast player, whether it's Apple iTunes or Spotify, whatever the case may be. We'd love to hear back from you. Give us a review, give us 5 stars, give us 1 star. Tell us that it was great. Tell us that you don't want to hear it again. Whatever, we just love to hear back from you. And we look forward to seeing you next time.